two questions before we end this.
Yeah.
We can talk here for 2 days.
Yeah.
One, the African church, the Kenyan. Actually, I'll even put it to the Kenyan church. Is there hope with all that's happening?
Yeah.
And just to be real and raw, there looks like there's a lot happening within the church. And by church, I'm talking about now the building and the mavunos and the sitams and the places where when you say go to church, what people are thinking. Is there a shift? Is there any hope in the institution? Let's actually start with that. I'll ask my final question.
Yeah, I think for me,
the reason why I just asked this is there's a young demographic just being like, listen, what's the difference? I'd rather go and have these conversations in the bar.
Yeah. That's for sure. And I think there's a lot of negative things and a lot of negative press the church has brought on itself. But the thing about it is always remembering that when you look at the news, it tends to amplify the 5%, the 3% that are deviant. And it doesn't tell you the whole story. And the whole story is that there are churches that are doing phenomenal things in this country. There are pastors who are doing amazing things in this country. And I know them. You know, I go around and I visit people and I'm like, my goodness, look at the heart this person has. Look at the integrity this system has. And so I feel like there has been a lot of negative press. This country, the reality is it's supported in many ways by the church. I mean, our public school system, our school system is, if the church was to withdraw completely from the school system, it would collapse.
Yeah, healthcare.
Healthcare. If the church was to withdraw completely, it would collapse. Those are the things that the news never really talks about, you know. They show, again, that 3% that is deviant. And they don't show some huge things that the church is doing, not just in Nairobi, but across the whole country. And this is true across most of our continent. And so I have a lot of hope. I think that when you have the tunnel vision that the media gives you, you see just the negative news. I have the privilege that I travel around and I get to see a lot of what's going on. My goodness, the church in Africa is growing and it is moving, and young people are, I mean, huge things are happening. You go to Europe now and you find a lot of churches are led by Africans, by young Africans who've gone out there and are now the ones. It's almost like the gospel. There's a season when the gospel left Europe and came to the dark continent of Africa. And I feel like in this season, the gospel is leaving Africa and going to the dark continent of Europe and beginning to, and it's African missionaries who are taking it. New Zealand, it's across the world. And so I see a different narrative. And maybe what happens, maybe my challenge is, I remember talking to one of my friends that we need to learn to tell our story different. The problem is the story has been so negatively told that even the church has come to believe the negative story. So even Christians are the ones who tell the bad story. But actually, I think when we start to open our eyes and to understand, there's a huge story that needs to be told about some of the powerful things that are happening because of the church. So I don't even think Mavuno is that exceptional, by the way. I think it's our demographic that might make us exceptional. But you go around to some of these churches and you're going to find Sitam is doing some amazing things. Nairobi Chapel is doing some amazing things. ICC is doing some, and it's not just them. It's even churches you don't know.
Yes.
Little churches in the slum. I mean, we bash the church, but I remember just one of the things that Kara and I was so struck by once, where the helper who worked in our home, and she had such a strong sense of who she was. You know those people who you're like, she's your employee, but she is herself. And it's not in a rude way. Yeah. She's very humble, very polite. But you're like, this one can't be pushed. She knows who she is. And when we really boiled down to it, we traced it to the teachings of her church. She went to a church somewhere, in some slum somewhere. And every time she went, by the way, she dressed up. Like, I mean, you wouldn't tell the difference between her and my wife. Huh? Like when we left the house on a Sunday. And the church taught her, be dignified, understand who you are. Understand whose you are. As a result, I just looked at this person and I said, her background doesn't define her. There's a certain sense of identity. Now again, that is such a huge thing.
It is.
And it's happening across the whole country, but nobody tells that story of what those of many, many good churches and what they're doing. I know a church in Korogosho where the guy was a gangster. The pastor himself was a gangster, used to rob guys. God saved him in a crusade in Uhuru Park. And now the guy's church is full of former prostitutes and robbers. I mean, those guys would be getting people somewhere. Now they're ushers, they're being taught how to do business. And these are the powerful stories that many, many, even little Mabati churches across our country. Those are the stories that are coming out. And so I think maybe part of it is being able to even challenge Christians to say, look, listen, stop listening to the mega story, that meta-narrative out there, which is being spread by the media. Start to investigate. Talk to your house up about the church they go to. Stop buying the lie. Because yes, there is that 5%, and I don't doubt it, by the way. I don't try and cover that up. There is an errant 5%. But I'd also say that in every industry, there's an errant 5%.
Yep.
And you don't judge the industry by that 5%. Whether it's medicine, whether it's media, I think it's the same thing. So I think that would be my answer to that.
That's a good one. Even a challenge to the Christians in media.
Absolutely.
To
look for the story. I mean, this last Sunday, maybe a month ago, well, less than a month, Mavuno Church closed all our churches, and we went to public schools and we painted.
Yeah, spread the love.
Yeah, we painted, we spent millions. I mean, I'm not asking for press for us, but that's a huge story by any means. I mean, it should be a huge story.
I actually saw that though in a newspaper.
Yes, there's a couple of papers, and I really want to commend the papers that actually took up that story.
My name is Patrick Mwangi. I'm the current principal of State House Primary School.
Today was an awesome day for me. Just excited to see the number of people who came in, and just to see everyone busy working towards making this place the environment that we've always wanted it to be for the next generation.
Today I painted some of the rooms. I also painted outside. You can tell that because my hands are messy. I did sound for the service.
I think participating in Spread the Love has been a challenge to me. Like, I believe that I personally can do more things for the community around me and just move out from the daily go to work, go back home and so forth, and just come together, whether as a life group with my friends, and take up a project and do something. It's possible.
What I saw here today is a very good initiative, which actually, on my perspective, I would like it to be more than once a year, like 3 times in a year, because the school actually is changed.
What I feel about today that was unique is that I got to experience this with the kids. And even when I was taking feedback from the kids, they spoke from the heart. So there's one kid who said, I love helping people. There's another kid who said that, what was unique about this is seeing how they've been able to help kids like themselves. So these kids don't see a difference between themselves and the kids who come to this school. And I think that's great. And it's important because this is how we churn and this is how we grow the community, because when these kids grow up, it's part and parcel of their own life.
Well, it's quite amazing that all the members of Mavuno Christian Church were involved in trying to clean the school, doing the painting, cleaning the compound, making everything shine in preparation for the opening of the school.
Our desire as the Spread the Love and Mavuno Church is really to turn this place to look as best as it can be for the next generation. We're not just doing this so that we can paint the classes and clean the classrooms and landscape the environment. Our desire is that our children can have a thriving environment, that will help them succeed even in the future.
But again, it's challenging, like you're saying, the Christians were in media and saying, why don't you jump on those stories? I know a church that is in Syokimau that this coming weekend are doing a cleanup with Wild Environment Day. They're cleaning up their whole town, their whole area. They've gotten the governor, they've gotten people, and it's a church organizing it. But again, those are not front page stories. So we need to start finding ways to just promote the good news, because what happens is you promote the good news, you cause other people to want to aspire to the good news. You promote the bad, even the people who are doing good, they go under because they don't want to be seen. And that's a danger that we have. Yeah, but for me, I think my vision, my desire is for the next generation. I look at my kids, and my prayer, even as we do something like Spread the Love, is that they will grow up thinking good when they think church. Because that's not what happens today. I agree with you. When people think church, they think all the scandals.
Yep.
All the things that we see on little videos. And that's not what, I don't think that's the right narrative. Yeah.
It's not the complete narrative.
It's not the complete narrative.
And it's not even majority of what's happening.
It's not the majority, and it's not a helpful narrative. You see, if we keep talking bad about our country, we'll start seeing bad about our country. So even the good, we will actually discourage.
Yep.
So there's also something called a helpful narrative. When you pinpoint the heroes. Why is it that when you watch American TV, it's like the president of the United States. I mean, it's almost like even us, you want to stand up. Huh? And those guys, they hash their people so much that all of us now think it must be an incredible country.
Exactly.
But it's because they talk about themselves that way. We always we say only in Kenya. We bash ourselves so badly that anybody listening to us even from the outside says, I'd hate to go to that country. It's a horrible, they must be horrible people.
Yeah.
So we don't realize when we dishonor even our leaders and our institutions, we actually dishonor ourselves. Anyway, that's a whole different story.
No, but that, I like it. I love it. I love it. Giggle, garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage, yeah. Garbage
don't
out.
expect beauty when you when all.
But I've had to learn that lesson. Huh? I mean, personally. I mean, just going back to my own story. I mean, I think as a young leader, I was a horrible guy. I mean, when Pastor Oscar was leading me, I was a very dishonoring leader. Huh? I think I basically was that guy who's like, why is my boss telling me? Why can't I do it differently? You know, why is, I mean, I mistrust authority. You know, it's almost like you're always, unless you feel it, it can't be right. But I think it was a season I went through where I began to realize, my goodness, that is what we tear down. If you're a dishonorable person, even if you have good leaders, you will tear them down. So I mean, I was led by Pastor Oscar, who's like one of the most honorable guys, no scandal, just leads a good life. Somebody who is so respectable even in this city. But I couldn't even respect him. So I'm like, it has nothing to do with the guy leading me. It has everything to do with me. Whether you put a good leader or a bad leader in front of me, I'll always complain. And I think that's what God used to just help me begin to realize, okay, I need to actually change myself to be able to start honoring and respecting the guys who are making a difference.
Yeah, that one has hit home. That one has hit home, especially for our society. But there's hope.
There's hope. There's hope.
Okay, last one, because I mean, we can talk here for 50 hours, but let's talk about the book Seasons. I always forget the tagline, but it's not you.
Seasons is good.
Seasons.
Is good.
But you've talked about the different seasons, and I think now we're at 50. 40 to 50, I think, when you finish that one.
Yeah.
So why did you write it? And what's the next season? What season would you, or what season is Pastor Oscar in?
So actually, that's good. That's a good question. Actually, you're the first guy who's made that tie. Yeah? I got the idea of seasons when I was in my 20s. And I actually introduced that in the book, and I talked about how I talked to one of my mentors, and he told me about how he's living his life according to seasons. And how I just I was so bold by that idea. He didn't actually use the word seasons, but he said he was living his life in 10-year installments. And I remember just thinking, my goodness, what's my life about? And I began to pray, and I really felt like God showed me very clearly that every season of your life is meant to count for something. And so I began to actually do a bit of research. I read, and the funny thing is the things that God showed me, because actually the first instance of me thinking through this was just in prayer. God showed me seasons. But I met my wife. I told you my wife is a psychologist, and she's now introduced me to different psychologists. And there's actually writings where people have studied seasons in life. And they've shown, there's a guy called Erickson, who's a psychologist, who actually wrote about the fact that when we develop, as we grow, there are different tasks for every season. And it was very interesting because the tasks that God had showed me is exactly what I began to see correlation with them. And so I did quite a bit of research, and that's what brought this book into play. But I've been so privileged to be led by a leader who has lived his seasons well. And then I've had the privilege as well of, in my 20s, already saying, I want my 20s to be about this. I want my 30s to be about this. I want my 40s to be about this. And here's what I found. When you're very intentional, it's shocking that how it's almost like, how would I put it? I mean, if I wasn't a God person, I'd say how the earth collaborates with you. You know, I mean, that's the stuff, the mambo jumbo I hear guys say, how nature itself, the planet aligns with you. Well, that's stuff. But I think for me, I want to say, if you're aligned to God's purpose and you're intentional about it, it's amazing how God accelerates you. I think that's my language. It's amazing how God accelerates you. And I found that because I understood what season I was meant to be in, I didn't waste time. I was able to jump right into it. So like this season where it's about handing over power and now mentoring people.
No problem.
It wasn't a problem for me because I knew one day I'm going to get there. Actually, when I planted Mavuno, I don't think you remember, but in my early days at Mavuno, I actually told guys, I'm only leading you guys for 10 years. After 10 years, I'm actually resigning.
And then it sounded like such a long time.
Yeah, first of all, it's far, and then who says that? But actually, exactly 10 years later, I was like, done. It's time to hand over to the next guy. And so that has given me such a clear script, and it's helped me not to panic. It's helped me not to be in a hurry. Because again, when you don't have a script as a young person, you're thinking, I'm falling behind, which is quarter life crisis. Huh? I'm like, my goodness, I'm 30, I haven't achieved anything. What's going on? I'm frustrated. But because I knew what the season should be, I'm like, okay, I'm in my season. This is a season when I'll be expecting this. So right now I'm in this season. I'm working for this. So it's helped me so much that I just thought I wish I could put this down for somebody else to benefit from it. And it's interesting, the feedback I'm getting from people is like, wow. I almost feel like the conversation I had with my mentor when I was in my 20s, I've been able to multiply it hundreds of times. And different people are saying, I'm so glad I've read this when I'm at this age. Even older people are saying, I can see the mistakes I've been making, and now I can actually go back and repair my foundation. And so I've really enjoyed, I mean, for me, here's something I learned. I learned, because I told you I'm an entrepreneur as well. And I actually don't see any dissonance between being a pastor and being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I think any leadership requires entrepreneurial thinking. So I apply my entrepreneurial thinking to being a pastor. But I also think that I want to be a place where I don't depend on the church tithes to support my lifestyle or my family. And I feel like that's a dignity area, and I think it's important for me. And I feel like God gave me entrepreneurial gifts, so why should I can do both. So it's interesting for me because as I kind of walk this journey, that Seasons has helped me really find that I can multiply. Knowing Seasons has helped me be able to see how to create institutions, how to stabilize those institutions, how to let people run institutions for me. So the theory in Seasons works whether you're a business person, whether you're a parent, because I use the theory also in my parenting. One of the things I really wanted is to make sure my kids, I'm actually releasing them to leadership. I'm raising kids who are global leaders. And so how do I start from the time they're 1 year old? I'm like, this is a leader. It's interesting, my I don't know if I should say this, my daughter who's in the States was lecturing her siblings on a WhatsApp, and we happened to glance at it, so we're laughing because she was like, you need to know, the Muriithis are leaders, and what you're doing is, I was like, in fact I looked at her, it was creepy, because I was like, that's us. She's replaying the things we've taught her ever since she was young. We are leaders, we are global leaders, and so this behavior does not suit a global leader. So we've been training our kids with that language, and we started young enough that they understood this is who we are. And so we've done it in parenting, we've done it in our businesses. When we start our business, the question is always, who are we going to hand over this business to? What's the legacy of this business? And as a result, we've been able to run multiple businesses. We've used it in church as well, which is our key contribution. Because for me, these businesses are to support. My hustle is the kingdom of God. It's to advance the kingdom of God, and primarily through the church. And so with the church, we've been able to do that same theory and to say, okay, right from the get-go, we're setting up leadership, we're setting up structures, so this thing influences the world and not just one little town. And so for me, that's why Seasons is so important. It helps you begin to, because I think everyone was created to influence the world. There's nobody who was created for Nairobi or, Rongai influence. You are created for huge global influence. But if you don't understand that, you're going to live in your little turf and be very comfortable with it. Not understanding this business idea God gave me for was to change people across Africa, not just in my little town. Yeah.
That's powerful. So I know you've given us tidbits. Of course, when we pick up the book and we read, it's in detail. Yeah, it's step by step. Yeah. So what, for the Pastor Oscar, or for what would be the next season?
Yeah. So my next season, so now I'm in my propagation season when I'm actually multiplying this solution. It doesn't take the same energy as management, because in your 30s, 40s, you need energy. Building, focus, you get tired. And so in my 50s now, I can't do what I did. By the way, I look at some of the things my younger guys are doing, I'm like, good on you, man. I can't run with you.
That's why you're there.
It's humbling. I'm glad you're there to do that. Because for me now, leading a church the way they're leading would take a lot of energy. But I also understand what my coming season is. Because my coming season, okay, so my season now is multiplying it.
Yes.
It still takes a level of energy.
It does.
But when I get to my next season, my season will become one of representing it. So I've stopped replicating or propagating it and I start representing it. That's a statesman stage.
Whoa.
So right now it's multiplying Mavuno. But when I get into my mid-50s, I want to move now into representing Mavuno. And representing Mavuno is very similar to Pastor Oscar and what he's doing right now. He represents Chapel globally. He has global influence. And that influence is helping Chapel expand much faster than if he was here leading the church himself.
I get it.
Yeah.
It's like when Mandela went for the World Cup. And
Boom.
just his presence
Boom.
there, to like, okay, we know where we'll forget every
It
other
became
country.
the greatest World Cup there's ever been because he was there, you know.
Yeah.
That's a representative stage. And leaders need to understand there's a power that comes out of leading with credibility. Remember, we talked about foundations and values.
All of
because
those things
if you
add up.
mess up your foundations and your values here, you'll never be able to represent. You know, those things that people do, you end up stealing because you want to get rich quickly. You end up sleeping with someone's wife because you couldn't control your urges. You didn't have delayed gratification. Those things that are not taught when you're a kid destroy your ability to represent anything. But there's a place you get to up here where in your industry, you become the go-to person. You're the Jack Welch. You write the book and you're not writing for GE, you're writing for the whole world.
That is crazy.
People respect you, you know? And that's a season that I'd want to enter into. And I think that's where Pastor Oscar is in. And for me, that's a season where I speak a lot more outside Mavuno than I do inside Mavuno. I get connections for Mavuno outside Mavuno much more. My being outside Mavuno helps Mavuno much more than my being inside.
I understand now the traveling, the meeting different leaders.
Absolutely.
That's what you're doing now.
And so for me, I'm moving into that.
Now you're building those relationships.
But I'm building the relationships for the sake of planting these churches. Right now, I'm very connected with the planting of the churches, with the multiplying, with coaching my leaders. But you see, even that coaching of these leaders, I'll need to hand it over to the guys who are now leading the churches, because even then they'll have reached a place where they're ready now for the next level. So you have to create an organization that allows people to find their vision within the vision, because it can't be Muriithi's vision. You get, if it's about Muriithi's vision, then all these guys are here to help me. But what I have to create in whatever I'm building is something that's big enough that if Richie is working with me, it's helping Richie achieve his purpose. And that means he has to have places to grow, because if I'm holding, then it means that he'll always be for me. But it has to get to the place where he can even outgrow me. And I suspect some of the leaders I'm leading right now will outgrow me. They'll actually lead in places I could never even have dreamt of leading. Yeah. So that's the next season. And for me, that season is an exciting one because it goes until your 60s. And then the last season, which is an extended season, is in your mid-60s and beyond, where you go into what is called, you become a sage. And it's about reflection. And that season now is where you're not even traveling anymore. People are coming to see you. You get, you're the place now where you represent in such a way that you lead not by strength but by wisdom. So for Kara and I, our desire in that season is to be in a place where we've created a retreat center. So we've got this little cute dream of a retreat center. Nice 20 acres on a lakefront. You like this 20 acres thing, eh? I like 20, you know. Because it has to have forest. It has to have some woods, a few horses, a retreat center. But the idea for us is we'd want a place where leaders from across the world come, spend time with us, because we're not entering planes at that season. People come and spend a week with us. They become refreshed. We have meals with them. We just mentor them. They have a fantastic time. That 20 acres is for them, not for us. So they're able to have recreation and quiet with their wives and then go back to whatever God has called them to lead. So that's what we see ourselves dying empty, pouring into people. That is so, and I'm sure you've experienced that from somebody. My parents are there right now. I mean, my dad's house is more full now than when I was growing up, and it was full when I was growing up. Like he has people coming, like young people in his house. Like there'll be 5 young people who came to see this guy, and they're all like 5 couples he married when he was in his 30s. And they've just come to spend an afternoon with him. So my parents have really exemplified that season of reflection for me. He's always, people are coming to see him. People are always looking for him. And that's what I want. I want to be that person who adds value until the day I die. And not by, I don't want to die in office. You know, that's what happens for Africans. When you say add value till I die, it means I die leading Mavuno. No, by that stage, I'm not even involved in management of the church. You know, I'm sort of like a spiritual head. God willing, and if God gives me that kind of life, I'd want to be in a place where I have moral authority more than any organizational authority. And that's what a leader should be at that season. You know why? One of the reasons why I think people need to get this book, and then we'll end by just saying where they can get it, is because in Africa, we don't have 100-year-old businesses. No. And it's part of it is understanding these seasons. Exactly. Exactly. From even build institutions, exactly. Yeah. Like it's maybe the Indians who now are having that transitional from the father owned it to the son, now to the grandson. That is so good, but why is it that Africans don't have this? Why is it? And it's not that we've not had businesses or entrepreneurships. Exactly. We don't hand off. And so even business, your parents educated you through a shop, whatever it was, but they never knew how to pass vision. So you went and did medicine, and it's like every generation just reinvents. So you'll always be employees because you're always reinventing. Or if you're business people, you only own a one generation business, which can't create real wealth. Because real wealth comes in the second and third generation. And so I think that's, for us, if we want to change as an African people, we have to understand our seasons.
Okay. Please tell me that this book is available for everybody.
This is
across the world. Because people are watching this from Japan and Asia and America.
Well, it's actually available across the world. You can actually get it on Amazon, Amazon Kindle store. Nice. So anybody outside the country where they have Amazon, you can order it and they'll deliver it globally. In Kenya, I'm selling it off my website, www.muriithiwanjau.com.
Yeah, and it's been scrolling on every video. So.
And all good. So you can order it there. We deliver it to where you are. And we're actually in the process now. We're going to put something on the website soon where we'll do a national distribution.
Okay.
We've got them in Uganda as well. But we're not in other countries yet, but we will get there. I mean, the idea is I would love to see my generation understanding this.
But digitally, anybody in the world can get it.
Anybody can get it from Kindle. I mean, if you have a Kindle, you can get it from wherever you are.
Okay.
And by the way, I told you I've got so many books. I've got like, when you asked me initially how many books, I thought you were asking how many books I own rather than what I've written. I've got literally thousands of books. I mean, I own a lot of books.
Yes.
But when I discovered the Kindle, I mean, most of my books are ebooks now. Yes. And I have a lot more. Nowadays, I carry, when I go on a plane, I've got hundreds of books literally with me.
Yes.
And so for me, nowadays I read everything electronically. It's much easier.
But I'm glad that at least anybody from across the world can access this book called Seasons, because I don't feel like this was a Kenya or Africa relevant conversation. I feel like it was relevant for everybody. Like when I came here, I said I want the book for my kids, but now I'm like, no, I need to understand even the new seasons that I'm going into or the seasons that I'm at.
That's good.
Anyway, let me just end this by saying thank you so much. First of all, thank you because I am a product of Mavuno.
Wow.
And even George here, who's my business partner. And so when I've heard you talk, I know that even this CTA and me shooting you and giving this information out, which is freely giving it so that it can go and change people's world. You know that garbage in, garbage out? I'm trying to counter that.
Wow.
And all of these are visions and purpose that I got in Mavuno.
Wow.
During those fearless influencer conversations that happened.
It was. All the crap we went through was worth it.
So I'm proof.
And I say that, with respect.
Yeah.
The stuff we went through, whenever I hear a story like yours, whenever I hear George's story, I'm like, if nothing else happened, and it was just the two of you, it would have been worth it for me.
But it's and we are trying to replicate this to other people. So thank you, because that vision is not in vain. That vision, I can, if anything ever happened to me, I tell God, okay, I'll let the guy in, him. I am your proof.
For me.
Yes, I am your proof.
Thank you.
At
least I know.
That's major.
Good to know that.
But also for the wisdom that you have shared to a lot of people here, freely given. This. I told him I came here with a different heart, because I'm like, you talked about these things and it's all nice when I'm hearing on the sermon, but then when you become and you get your own businesses, like. You look at people with a different lens. You remove that pastor lens and you put on leadership, and you're like, that guy's a leader. Those are HR issues that you're talking about. Those are revenue issues that you're talking about. Those are expansion. The business lessons that you've given in this 3-hour conversation or slightly more is just amazing. Wow. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Guys, go and get the book.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. God bless you. Keep you alive and for the seasons that are to come, and just thank you, and also Pastor Caro, for the amazing time that we've had in your house.
Oh, thank you guys. Really appreciate you both.
Sasa guys, muriithiwanjau.com. Later. That was good, man.
Wow.